You were taught that presence equals worth, that being available makes you relevant, that loyalty is proven by consistency. That is not morality, it is conditioning, and it exists for one reason: to keep you predictable and extractable. The moment you withdraw, the illusion fractures. Power never begins with action. It begins with framing. Whoever defines what your presence means controls the exchange. When you stay accessible, you let others decide your value through use. When you disappear, you force them to confront the absence of control. This is not about ghosting. Ghosting is emotional. This is strategic removal. A clean extraction from a system that benefited from your visibility more than you did. Most men mistake silence for weakness because they were trained to perform, to respond, to explain, to prove continuity. They confuse being seen with being selected. But selection does not chase, it withholds. When you are always present, you lower the cost of you. Scarcity is not aesthetic, it is economic, and humans respond to economic signals faster than moral ones. The frame shift is brutal. Your availability has never been neutral. It was read as permission, permission to delay you, permission to test you, permission to consume you without consequence. You thought you were being solid. What you were actually being was stable, infrastructure, reliable, replaceable, quietly exploited. When you cut access, the first thing that dies is the false narrative others held about you. The version of you that was always reachable, always accommodating, always understanding. That version existed to stabilize their world, not strengthen yours. This is where discomfort begins, not for you, but for them, because now they have to interpret instead of assume. Silence is not empty. Silence is ambiguous, and ambiguity destabilizes hierarchy. When people cannot read you, they cannot place you beneath them. The moment your pattern breaks, their sense of dominance fractures. This is why disappearance provokes reaction instead of closure. You are not removing yourself from their lives. You are removing their access to certainty. Certainty is power. Remove it and people scramble. Understand this: you do not disappear to be missed. That is still dependence. You disappear to collapse the frame in which they understood you. No announcement, no explanation, no emotional residue. Explanation is a negotiation, and negotiation reopens the gate. The cold truth is this: anyone who needed you constantly never respected you. They relied on you, and reliance masquerades as connection until access is threatened. When you withdraw, you are no longer playing your assigned role. You step outside the script, and systems hate unpredictability. This chapter is not about vanishing. It is about reclaiming authorship, about deciding when, where, and why you are available, if at all. The moment you stop managing others' expectations, you begin enforcing your own. And that is the first act of sovereignty. Every social structure runs on an unspoken economy. Not money, access. Who gets your time? Who gets your attention? Who gets proximity to your energy without earning it? You were taught to treat access as politeness, as generosity, as proof of character. That teaching was never neutral. It was survival training for people who benefit from your openness. Access is not kindness. It is currency, and you have been spending it like it's worthless. Every time you reply instantly, you lower perceived demand. Every time you explain yourself, you reduce mystery. Every time you make yourself available without resistance, you teach others how cheaply you can be acquired. Humans do not consciously calculate this. They feel it. The nervous system registers patterns faster than the mind rationalizes them. Repetition becomes expectation. Expectation becomes entitlement. This is how hierarchy forms without words. Those above control access. Those below request it. Those exploited give it freely. When you are always reachable, you are signaling submission to the timeline of others. You are aligning your internal rhythm to external demands. That is not cooperation. That is alignment without authority. The dangerous part is not that others take advantage. It's that they stop seeing you as autonomous. You become a function, a resource, a stable node they can return to when convenient. And resources are never respected. They are managed. This is why over-availability breeds contempt instead of loyalty. The mind devalues what it does not have to secure. Look at how people react when access becomes scarce. They don't reflect. They react. They feel irritation before curiosity, anxiety before understanding. That emotional spike reveals the truth. Access was assumed, not appreciated. The access economy punishes generosity without boundaries. You were not giving, you were leaking. And leaks attract predators. This is where most men get confused. They think cutting access is manipulative. It isn't. Manipulation requires intent to control others. This is control of self, the refusal to be placed on demand. Control is not cruelty, it is structure. When you withdraw access, you are not taking something away. You are correcting a mispriced asset. You are recalibrating the market. Some people will vanish. That tells you everything. Some will test boundaries. That tells you more. Some will escalate. That tells you who was feeding. Notice the shift. Once access is no longer guaranteed, behavior changes. Tone sharpens. Messages become loaded. Concern appears where none existed before. This is not affection. This is withdrawal symptoms. The access economy reveals itself only when the supply stops. And here's the part no one tells you. The system will try to punish you for disrupting it. You will be labeled cold, arrogant, changed, difficult. These labels are not diagnoses. They are pressure tactics designed to restore your previous compliance. Do not defend against them. Defense implies guilt. Silence is not passive. Silence is refusal to validate the frame. Once you understand access as currency, you stop negotiating with emotion. You begin managing exposure. You decide who sees you, when, and under what conditions. That shift alone moves you out of the lower tier. Because men who control access are not chased. They are watched. And those who are watched are never truly weak. When you cut access, people do not respond randomly. They reveal their category. Withdrawal is a sorting mechanism. It forces behavior into the open the way pressure exposes cracks in steel. There are three primary archetypes that surface when the supply stops. You have encountered all of them. You just misread their intentions because access was still open. The first are the feeders. These are the ones who benefited most from your availability. Not materially, psychologically. They fed on your attention, your responsiveness, your emotional labor. They didn't need you to succeed. They needed you to remain accessible. When you withdraw, feeders panic first. They reach out indirectly. They test the water, a casual message, a vague concern, a manufactured excuse to re-enter your space. If that fails, irritation follows, subtle guilt, passive accusations. You've changed. You're distant. What happened to you? These are not questions. They are attempts to reassert entitlement. Feeders confuse access with intimacy. When denied, they feel robbed, and robbed people escalate. The second archetype is the watchers. These are the observers. They never demanded much, but they always monitored your availability. They took notes without knowing it. They measured your responsiveness against others. They tracked your position in the hierarchy. When you disappear, watchers do not reach out immediately. They wait. They study. They adjust their behavior based on what they think your silence means. Watchers are dangerous because they adapt. If you reappear too easily, they downgrade you. If you stay gone too long, they reassess your value upward. Watchers respect patterns, not explanations. They are the silent majority, and their perception determines reputation. The third archetype is the enforcers. These are the most aggressive. They benefit from the existing structure and feel threatened when it destabilizes. Your withdrawal challenges their control, not because they cared about you, but because your compliance reinforced their authority. Enforcers respond with confrontation, direct messages, demands, accusations disguised as concern. They may invoke history, loyalty, or obligation. After everything I've done for you, this isn't like you. We need to talk. This is not communication. It is coercion. Enforcers rely on your discomfort with conflict. They assume you will re-engage to restore equilibrium. And if you do, you lose leverage permanently. The mistake most men make is treating all reactions the same. They over-explain to feeders, reassure watchers, and negotiate with enforcers. That is backwards. Feeders must be starved. Watchers must be left uncertain. Enforcers must be denied reaction. Silence is not avoidance. It is filtration. Your disappearance is not about punishing others. It is about observing truth under pressure. People show you who they are when the transaction changes, and make no mistake, it was always a transaction. You just weren't setting the terms. This chapter matters because it removes confusion. You stop asking why are they reacting like this, and start recognizing patterns. Once you see the archetype, you stop personalizing the response. And once you stop personalizing, you stop being controllable. That is the pivot from naive to strategic. When access disappears, the human animal does not become reflective. It becomes exposed. Pressure strips away narrative and reveals instinct. This is where the real data appears. Every person carries a panic signature, a predictable pattern of behavior, triggered by perceived loss of control. You don't see it during comfort, you see it during withdrawal. History is filled with this pattern. Empires don't collapse when they're expanding. They collapse when supply lines break, when certainty vanishes, when the old rules stop working and no replacement appears. The same principle governs human interaction. When you remove yourself, you don't create absence. You create scarcity. Scarcity activates the oldest survival circuitry in the brain. Logic shuts down. Emotion takes over. And emotion leaks intent. Watch what happens next. Some people attempt re-entry through charm, sudden warmth, compliments that never existed before. This is not appreciation. It is retrieval behavior. The nervous system trying to restore a familiar reward loop. Others escalate through hostility, mockery, dismissal, character attacks. This is dominant signaling under threat. When control is lost, aggression fills the vacuum. Both responses come from the same source: destabilization. Your disappearance removes their ability to predict you. Prediction is safety. When safety is threatened, people reveal their priorities. This is why silence is feared more than confrontation. Confrontation offers a target. Silence offers nothing to push against. It forces the mind inward, and most people cannot stand that. Here is the critical insight. Panic creates leaks. Under stress, people overcommunicate. They expose insecurity through frequency. They reveal hierarchy obsession through tone. They disclose dependency through urgency. The more someone reacts to your absence, the more power they were extracting from your presence. This is not cruelty. It is mechanics. Look at how quickly respect erodes when someone realizes they can no longer summon you. Look at how narratives shift. You become distant, arrogant, cold. Not because you changed, but because the role you played was removed. Humans reframe loss as moral failure to protect ego. This reframing is not about truth. It is about coping. And this is where most men sabotage themselves. They reappear too soon. They explain. They soften. They reassure. In doing so, they erase all diagnostic data. You must let the panic run its course. Do not interrupt the process. Do not correct misunderstandings. Misunderstandings reveal more than clarity ever will. Power is not taken in moments of reaction. It is accumulated in moments of restraint. This chapter exists to harden you against emotional bait, to show you that what feels like rejection or hostility is actually exposure, a system struggling to recalibrate without your compliance. Once you see panic as information, not insult, you stop reacting. And when you stop reacting, the hierarchy begins to invert. Because the one who remains calm during loss is always the one with leverage. Absence without structure is escape. Absence with structure is dominance. Most men vanish emotionally, impulsively, resentfully, hoping to be chased. That is not strategy. That is wounded behavior disguised as strength. Controlled absence is different. It is deliberate, calculated, devoid of emotional residue. The objective is not to punish others. It is to remove yourself from unprofitable exchanges without signaling need, anger, or justification. The moment emotion enters the withdrawal, leverage evaporates. The first rule: no announcement. Announcements are bids for recognition. They frame your withdrawal as reaction rather than decision. Power never explains itself in advance. You don't warn a system before exiting it. You simply stop participating. The second rule: no gradual fade. Gradual disappearance invites negotiation. It trains others to probe your boundaries incrementally. Controlled absence is clean. One day present, next day inaccessible, not dramatic, not symbolic, final. The third rule, no emotional leakage. This is where discipline matters. No subtweets, no indirect signals, no visible agitation. Any trace of emotional output gives the system something to work with. Silence must be total. Think like a surgeon. The incision is precise. No unnecessary damage, no lingering contact. The goal is to remove your availability while preserving ambiguity. Ambiguity forces others to self-diagnose. They fill the void with their own insecurities, assumptions, and projections. And that is where your leverage compounds. When you reappear, if you ever do, it must be on your terms. Short, controlled, non-explanatory. Presence without accessibility. Visibility without availability. This recalibrates perception. People begin to treat you differently not because you demanded respect, but because they no longer understand how to access you. Uncertainty breeds caution. Caution breeds respect. This is the shift from being managed to being accounted for. Controlled absence also filters alliances. Those who only valued your availability will disappear permanently. That is not loss. That is efficiency. Those who remain adapt. They approach with more care, more precision, less entitlement. You are not teaching them how to treat you. You are showing them that treatment is irrelevant. Access is conditional. The mistake to avoid is re-entry through explanation. Explanation collapses the new hierarchy. It restores the old dynamic where you seek to be understood. Understanding is not power. Positioning is. This chapter installs a behavioral operating system. It replaces emotional reflex with strategic restraint. You stop reacting to pressure and start letting pressure do the work for you. Absence becomes a tool, not a tantrum. And tools are only effective when wielded without sentiment. You cannot control access while clinging to an identity built on permission. The version of you that needed to be acknowledged, included, or validated cannot survive this shift. It will sabotage you from inside. That identity must die, not metaphorically, functionally. The old identity believed consistency created safety. That showing up proved worth. That being good would be rewarded with loyalty. That identity was useful for others. It made you predictable. It made you reliable. It made you easy to place, and anything that can be placed can be positioned beneath someone else. Identity death is not emotional, it is structural. You stop behaving in ways that require external response to feel real. You stop measuring your existence through feedback loops. This is where most men relapse. They disappear, feel the power shift, then panic internally. The silence becomes uncomfortable. The lack of reaction feels like erasure. So they reinsert themselves. A message, a check-in, a justification. That impulse is the old identity screaming for oxygen. You must let it suffocate. The replacement identity does not seek recognition. It assumes autonomy. It operates from internal timing, not social pressure. It does not need to be remembered. It decides when to be visible. This is not confidence. Confidence still seeks reflection. This is sovereignty. Sovereignty means you are not emotionally altered by others' access to you. You do not feel more real when contacted. You do not feel diminished when ignored. Your nervous system decouples from external demand. This is the hardest transition because it removes the emotional payoff. No applause, no reassurance, no confirmation, just silence and internal alignment. Most men cannot endure this phase. They return to noise, to validation, to familiar roles. Those who endure emerge unrecognizable, not louder, not dominant in appearance, quieter, harder, unreadable. People sense the difference immediately. The absence of need is felt before any words are exchanged. You are no longer scanning for reaction. You are assessing for utility. Relationships invert. Conversations shift. You become the variable others adjust to, not the constant they exploit. This is the real selection filter. Only those comfortable with your independence remain. The rest drift away, unable to anchor themselves to something they cannot influence. You do not grieve this loss. You observe it. Identity death is not about becoming ruthless. It is about becoming unreachable to manipulation. Once the old self is gone, access control becomes natural, not forced, not strategic, automatic. You don't cut people off. You simply stop extending yourself, where there is no return, and that is when disappearance stops being an action and becomes a state. The greatest mistake after gaining leverage is nostalgia, the urge to reopen what you sealed, not because it serves you, but because it feels familiar. Familiarity is the final trap. Once access is revoked, it must remain revoked. Re-entry restores the old hierarchy instantly. It tells the system that pressure works, that silence was temporary, that your sovereignty is negotiable under the right emotional conditions. People do not remember your restraint. They remember your collapse. This is why elite operators burn bridges cleanly, not dramatically, permanently. A bridge that still exists invites testing. A gate that once opened will be pushed again. You are not obligated to explain your absence. Explanation is retroactive permission. It teaches others how to reach you next time. The final filter is consistency. When people realize the door is not reopening, behavior changes for good. Respect stabilizes. Narratives die. Attempts cease. You are no longer a variable. You are a constant outside their control. This is where selection completes. Those who remain do not ask for access. They wait for invitation. They understand that proximity to you is conditional, not assumed. Those who cannot tolerate this exit your orbit entirely. They label you. They resent you. They move on. Let them. A man feared in absence is more powerful than a man admired in presence. This chapter exists to sever the last emotional tether. The need to be remembered kindly. Kindness is irrelevant to power. What matters is position. You are not building community. You are securing territory. From this point forward, your availability is deliberate. Your silence is final. Your presence is rare. And those who sense that will never try to cross the boundary again. Because gates that never reopen train obedience without a word. End of sequence.